Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Your Relationship With podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Snow. We started talking several months ago about some of the things that are going down in the coaching industry. There's a lot happening that is kind of shady, kind of cult-like, kind of unethical, kind of gross, and it's actually been going on for quite some time. People just started talking about it, at least in the space that I'm in, recently in the last few months, and it's still going on, and it's still a really important topic. And my heart is in coaching. I started as an actual coach, coaching actual humans, not business owners. I was a dating and relationship coach for 6 years, and I love coaching. I think that there is so much power in getting coached by a good coach. The whole reason I became a coach was because I met a coach who changed my life. How many times can I say coach in 30 seconds? You guys should be playing a drinking game or something. No, don't, because I'm going to say coach about 1,000 more times. Anyway, my point is, I think that coaching is a great thing. And I also think there's some really gross stuff happening in the coaching industry, and a lot of coaches being put out into the industry or putting themselves out into the industry that are not qualified, that are not equipped to coach, that don't understand the difference between a coach and a therapist. And I think it is getting very dangerous and very bad. But my interview today is on a little bit of a different spin. I am talking to Samantha Siffring about your relationship with being a coach amidst all this criticism of the industry. Because the reality is, just like in most industries, there are really good people doing really good stuff, and there are really shady people doing really shady stuff. And it is important to me that not just the coaches, but also people who may potentially hire a coach understand how to know the difference, and that they don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, that they don't just assume because these shady things are happening that coaching is not a good thing and that hiring a coach isn't the right thing for them, because it very well might be. So this is a really important conversation. It's a really big conversation that we only just dove into on the surface. But I hope that regardless of where you're at with the coaching industry, whether you are a coach, you don't like coaches, you have had a coach that wasn't great, you've had a coach that was wonderful, you've never had a coach, but you've thought about it, or you just want to know what Samantha's got going on, because she is pretty smart. Listen to this interview. Samantha is a business coach for women-owned small businesses. She is also the founder of an operations and marketing agency. She's a mom of 3 kids and 3 pets. She lives in Denver, Colorado, and she loves traveling, reading romance novels, and volunteering. Check out this interview and let me know what you think. Hello, Samantha. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm super excited to talk to you today. I've been following you for a long time, and I'm excited to talk to you today about some of the things that are going on in the coaching industry, especially in light of actually being a coach. It can be a little bit complicated, but I think that this interview is actually going to be really good for people, even if they're not coaches, if they're thinking about becoming coaches, or even if they are, I was going to say normal people, non-coaches who maybe have hired a coach in the past or are considering hiring a coach in the future. I think this conversation is actually really important for everybody. So I appreciate you coming on to talk about this. So before we dive in, tell everybody just a little bit about you and what you do and about your relationship with the coaching industry.
Yeah. So my relationship is I am a coach. I'm a business coach. I also own an agency that does operations and marketing support, like hands-on services for business owners. So I see people's businesses from both the mindset perspective, but also that operational perspective, getting in there and doing hands-on work as well. I have been a coach since 2015. So it's been, I don't know, kind of an interesting ride. I feel like when I first started, I didn't really know a lot of coaches. I actually didn't know that coaching was even a thing until pretty much the month that I started as a coach. So I have a master's in counseling and I was home with little kids. And this was like in the days before BetterHelp and all of that. There was no online therapy. So I met this other therapist who had become a life coach, who had this online business where she got a bunch of clients and then had a team of life coaches that were former therapists that coached them. And as soon as I heard about her business, I just immediately, I was like, first of all, I wish I came up with that first. But since I didn't, are you hiring? And I started working for her almost right away. So that was kind of my intro to coaching being a thing, which I now find so interesting because that's so different than so many people's experience coming into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into that before really knowing that there was this whole coaching industry or anything like that. So I feel like I've seen a lot of different corners of coaching. After I became a coach, I then sought out other coaches and wanted to see what are other people talking about? What are they teaching? What ideas are out there? Started following a ton of coaches, listening to coach podcasts, going on retreats with coaches, that kind of thing. And was exposed to a lot of different arenas of coaching. So I feel like that's a really good perspective to have coming into this conversation. It's not just one particular community or school of thought.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit later about how your relationship with being a coach has changed over the years, which again, I think is an interesting perspective for you because you did become a coach before coaching was really a thing. And now it's like every other person I meet is either a realtor or a coach. That's not 100% true, but sometimes it feels like that's true. So you've definitely seen, I'm sure, had a lot of transitions and a lot of thoughts and feelings about your own identity as a coach and where the coaching industry is going. So we're going to dive into all that. But let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the coaching industry right now, because I feel like there is a lot of, I don't want to say unrest, but there's a lot of things being talked about in the coaching industry that I feel like haven't been talked about for a while, and maybe are things that were always there. It's just now people are actually starting to talk about them. And I think in a lot of ways, these conversations are really good, right? Because that's the only way that there is going to be change. And also, I think sometimes there's a downside to it where people who are not fully informed of all the different aspects of what's going on, especially the non-coaches, are like, okay, I knew this was a scam all along. Don't come to me with your coaching. Coaching, I knew it was a made-up profession. So let's just talk a little bit about like, what do you see going on in the coaching industry right now? And why do you think that there is this criticism of the coaching industry happening?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to it, but something that I have said a lot to clients who are coaches who have been concerned or wanted support with this is that this actually isn't unique to coaching. So right now, there in society, humanity at large, there is a lot of criticism of a lot of things. There's a lot of old systems and structures that are being questioned. There's a lot of dark truth being revealed into the light. And I think it's been going on for several years now in all different arenas. And I think that there's just a lot of change happening. So that to me is really the first thing to look at with it, that this is not a, oh no, coaching has a problem. This is a, lots of parts of society have problems and it's all coming up and we're working through it together.
Mm-hmm.
So personally, I find a lot of comfort in that like it's not like an isolated incident only in one industry. There's so much going on in the entertainment industry, There's so much going on in business in general, in education, like so many different areas. There's so many different things happening. So that's kind of my first thought, is that this is just kind of a larger cultural thing that we're going through. I think part of it as well, I saw a really interesting TikTok recently, and the person was talking about morality, and she was responding to somebody who had commented on one of her prior videos telling her, you shouldn't say the word fuck. And if I have to explain to you why you shouldn't say it, then you have no morals. And her response was that she sees it as there's two different ways to look at morality or approach morality. And one is where that person was coming from, this like top down perspective of like morality comes from authority. They say it's right or wrong, so it's right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, my morality comes from looking at what causes harm. If it causes harm, it's wrong. If it doesn't, it's fine. And the word fuck is not harming someone. It's not a slur. It's not derogatory or an attack. It's being used as an exclamation. It is not causing harm. It is not wrong. I will keep doing it. And I found that fascinating for so many reasons. But I think that part of this that's going on is kind of a cultural shift around right and wrong, and getting away from having these authority figures on a pedestal who can do no wrong, and starting to see like anybody can do harm, and reframing what we think is right or wrong in those terms. Mm-hmm. So I think part of this is related to that. I think that, I know in my experience in some coaching communities, there was for sure this like authority top-down kind of right or wrong, where you look at somebody who is further along than you, who's more successful than you, and if they're doing it, it must be okay. And it's coming to light now, it's not okay. Mm-hmm. It can cause harm in some cases. So I think that's some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. And I think it gets kind of complicated too, because so many of these things are subjective, right? Like the idea of what's ethical and what's not ethical. What is like constructive criticism versus what is you just being a mean person. And even what is causing harm versus what is not causing harm, right? I mean, there are people who I truly believe think that by convincing someone to take out a second mortgage on their home, or open another credit card, or, spend their inheritance on this expensive coaching package, that I don't think they're doing that to hurt that person. I think in a lot of ways, depending on the person, they believe that is helping that person, right? And then there's other people who see that happening and are like, oh my gosh, that's so toxic, that's unethical, that's manipulative, that's harmful. And so that, I think, is part of why it gets kind of cloudy too, is because a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about what is ethical, especially when it's not coming from the top down, right? Like, we're not living in a world where every single person says what the Bible says is right and wrong is correct, what the government says is right and wrong is correct, what the police say are right is wrong is correct. So there's no like universal truth of any of that. And so I think that makes it complicated too.
Yeah, I think it does too. And like, the law is the law, but so much of what has been criticized is not necessarily illegal. And ethics is subjective. So you're exactly right. There is so much variation in how people interpret things. And even thinking about like the second mortgage or whatever, so many very successful business owners have stories like this, where it is like, I sold everything I had, I took out all these loans, I used my last dollar, like whatever it is, right? Rags to riches situation in their story. And that was like the pivotal moment where they started to build whatever it is that they have built. And then there's these stories on the flip side of the person who did that where it didn't work out. And even sometimes they're the same successful person. So many successful people have had bankruptcies in their past.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes too, it is this like, well, it feels like it's okay if it works out and it's not okay if it didn't. And
Mm-hmm.
I know I think about things in the coaching world from a much more business coaching perspective because that's the arena that I am in. And, looking at, okay, did the business do what they wanted it to or not? But there's risk inherent in business. And something that has been maybe like a shift for me in thinking about coaching and reframing how I see some things is just really accepting that risk is there. And as the coach, I can't take that away. Like, I think that I tried for so long to be like, how can I make this like totally risk free? And I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my business isn't risk free either.
Right. Unless
There's
you
no
can take away
guarantees.
someone's autonomy and free will and take
Right.
complete control of them. And even then, there's probably not a guarantee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I feel like I have like all of these like mind tangents, but this is all the kind of stuff that I've been processing for the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's a big topic. Do you think that part of the problem is that coaching is technically an unregulated industry? Like, do you think having some sort of regulatory body would solve the problem?
I don't actually think so, because therapy is regulated and therapists can also cause harm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the medical profession, like doctors, surgery, like all of that, that has regulations that can lead to bad outcomes too. And it's not even always the fault of the provider. So I like there's just a lot of nuance to it. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily against regulation. I just don't think it solves the problems completely or in the way that we would want it to.
Yeah. I think it may solve some of the problems. Like part of what I see and a part of my criticism of the coaching industry is that, I could start Melissa's coaching certification program today and
Mm-hmm.
it's $10 billion dollars and it takes 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
thanks for your $10 billion dollars. You're now a certified life coach, right? And now you
Yeah.
go out and are coaching people. I mean, I don't know who's hiring you, but maybe someone's hiring
Mm-hmm.
you and you're
Yeah.
coaching people, but you have no idea what you're doing. You don't know where the line is between what I should coach on and what I should be referring to a therapist. You don't know how to handle when there's some sort of trauma that comes up or, all
Mm-hmm.
of these different complicated things that I think even I, as a certified coach, wasn't expecting or prepared for. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's part of my issue is I feel like there's a lot of coaches out there who don't fully know what they're doing and don't have all of the tools and the knowledge that they need in order to be not causing harm, in my opinion. So,
Mm-hmm.
in that aspect, I do think that some sort of regulation may help that.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely agree it's not going to fix all the problems. I mean, even
Yeah.
we look at like advertising in general, right? It's like we
Mm-hmm.
love to talk about the coaches that are like, look at my red bottom shoes and me flying, in my private jet and all of these things. And we like to criticize them, but like turn on the TV, right? I mean, it's mascara.
Yeah.
I have this big fancy life and these fancy clothes and this beautiful man and this amazing life because I use this mascara, right? It's really
Yeah.
not all that different.
Right. I agree. And I think that part of this, like talking about the $1 billion 5 minute certification type thing, I wonder where is the line for being a savvy consumer? And I think that regulation wise, maybe what part of this is like using the existing regulations around truth in advertising in the coaching industry. I think that there's so many people who are coaches who have no clue about business and marketing, and they learn from people who really truly have no clue about business and marketing outside of coaching. And they then do the things that the more successful person is doing because they think that it's okay to do. And they could literally be breaking the law.
Yeah.
Existing laws around advertising. So I think it's like a both and, right? Like being more responsible in your marketing and in your advertising, operating within the law as a step one, but also trying to be accurate and honest and communicating what's important that the people need to know about your product and being more savvy as a consumer. I think both things are there.
Yeah.
Or
And
need
that's
to be
great
there.
advice for any industry, really.
Yeah,
For sure.
I think so.
Because I think, I mean, you and I talked about this a little bit before, but I think part of the problem too is in a lot of the coaching spaces, the focus has shifted from how many people can I help to how much money can I make? And that has kind of jacked things up too.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think there's so many great things about having a coaching business. I think having your own business in general, if it can be online, there is just so much innate flexibility there. And you are able to have more flexibility in what you make as well. Like it's not like a job where you have a set salary and no matter how you overperform, you still may not get a raise. This is like why I quit every job I ever had because it was like, it doesn't matter if I'm really good at this. I get paid the same. What's the point?
Yep.
So I think those things are incredible about having a coaching business. And I think there is really great income potential there. But I do think having that as the primary focus and now having people who have come into that as a career because they see income potential has really led to people who are, light on the care for others and heavy on the care for making money.
And I can see it for myself in my own business. I was a dating coach for 6 years before I transitioned to business. And I realized not very long ago that after my certification, my main focus became, how do I market? How do I make sales? How do I make money? How do I run this business more efficiently? How do I automate? Right? For 5, 6 years, there was no, how do I be a better coach? And I think it's really easy to get caught up in that because obviously we are business owners. We do want to make money, right? But I think a lot of times there's a unbalance between us focusing on making more money and being good at sales and marketing. That's another thing too, right? There's a lot of people out there who are good at sales and marketing who aren't necessarily good at coaching, which is also a problem. And so I think that too is another layer of this when the focus is shifted in any business to how do I make more sales as opposed to how do I be better at what I do? How do I provide a better service and product?
Yeah. And I think that there has to be a balance there. Because I also see the people who sign up for certification after certification, hoping that if they become a good enough coach, clients will come to them. And that also does not happen. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's why I think what you
both.
do is so smart because you have the mix between the two, right? Like there is definitely a mindset piece of growing your business 100% at any level, whether you're trying to make your first dollar or your first $1 million, that mindset piece is so important. But then there's also strategy involved too. And we have to balance the two for sure.
Yeah. And something that I've seen in growing the agency is I have had some clients where there comes a point where it's like, this is no longer mindset realm. This is your business cannot grow if you are still trying to do every single thing in the business. Like that is not a mindset solution. That
Mm-hmm.
is you need more hands in your business
Mm-hmm.
solution. And the shifts that I have seen in the clients who have come into the agency, and maybe we are the first person that they have in their business aside from themselves. So it's the first time that they're offloading things and delegating things and like totally letting go of their email inbox or their Instagram or whatever their thing is. The amount of time and energy and inspiration they have for growth and new ideas is shocking. It's like you
Yeah.
go from feeling burnout, feeling like you are considering quitting your business to, whoa, now I see the path forward. Now I'm enjoying things again. Now I can actually take a vacation without checking my email every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
you're right. It's like, yeah, mindset is important, but sometimes it is not a mindset solution that you need.
Yeah, for sure. So how would you say that your relationship with being a coach has changed, especially recently?
Yeah. So I feel like it's been like there was a solid stable period and then there's like a rocky roller coaster period. And I feel like I'm getting more in a stable period now. And I feel like that roller coaster period was being willing to question everything, even like, is there value in coaching and do I want to continue being a coach? Like putting everything on the table for
Mhm.
questioning. And I think that's a scary thing to do. But I really recommend that anyone who's struggling with this be willing to do that. And it's allowed me to land in this place where I feel a lot more clear on my role as a coach and the value that I bring as a coach. And after the rocky roller coaster period, I feel more confident now offering coaching than I feel like I even did before that
Wow.
because I was willing to question that and find the answers for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I I don't think that I'm in this place where I'm like coaching is the answer to everything. Obviously, because I was just saying it's not the only solution, but I just can't deny the growth that I see when I work with the client, the results that I see when I work with a client, the results I see in my own self when I do journaling exercises and then feel better, feel more hopeful, feel more inspired, and then take action. And then, oh, look, now my results are better. Like there's just no denying that that is a helpful thing and that that makes a meaningful difference. So I think it was helpful to be like, is there anything here? And then find what is here.
Yeah, for sure. And I would imagine most people go through that at some point in their business, especially if you are committed to being an entrepreneur long term. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine there's a lot of people that do it for about a year and are like, this is terrible, right? Because
Yeah,
it's
because
not at
it is
all what you're
sometimes.
expecting. Not at all. Like
Yeah.
I got my certification. I was like, hey, great. Who's ready for some coaching? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
nobody. Hello. I have to like do something else. But I think, yeah, I do think there's that period as with any relationship, right? This
Mm-hmm.
happens in our romantic relationships. I remember when my husband and I first moved in together, we'd been dating for 6 years. And I remember laying in bed next to him after we've lived together for like 4 or 5 days and just thinking like we have made a horrible mistake because I have
Mm-hmm.
never been so annoyed with you in my entire life as I
Yeah.
have been for the last 4 days, right? But there's always this period of like things are good and now things are kind of like transitioning
Mm-hmm.
and growing and maybe, kind of like bumping heads a little bit and I don't know what we're doing or why we're doing it. And then you work through that space if you're willing to be honest with yourself, with the person or the thing that you're in a relationship with, if you're willing to put it all out on the table and feel the feelings and do the work, then you can get to that other side where it's like, okay, it's actually better now than it was before that hard stuff, but that hard stuff kind of just had to be there. And I think that's true in any business.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, part of being okay with being a coach and being willing to continue to be a coach for me has been thinking about, what do I bring to the table here? I think a lot of the communities that I had been in, not at the very beginning, but later on in my business, or more recently in my business, was very focused on like mindset only or thoughts only. And that had always kind of been a struggle for me, because part of my background also is in marketing and business. And so I knew there's more to it than just how we think. Like, how we think is very important. It impacts everything, but there's just more to it. And I started to see that the people who were in like masterminds and other programs that I was in that were successful, like around my same level of business success or revenue, we all had marketing backgrounds. Like, we all brought some marketing knowledge to the table. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, so the thought stuff is really helping us, because we've got this other knowledge that the marketing, or like the marketing stuff that's there, that the thought stuff can fuel.
Totally.
That makes sense. And it makes sense then why people who don't have that experience or knowledge coming in aren't as successful. So that, I think, reflecting on all of those things has really given me a lot of confidence in teaching actual strategy to my clients, like even coaching clients. So like, really, I feel like my coaching style has very much become, hey, we're here to strategize. We're here to workshop, to come up with the ideas and the plans. And like, we'll start with the goal, and then we're going to craft the plan. And then when mindset blocks us from moving forward, that's when we coach on mindset. But that's not like the default coaching. Like, most of it is more tactical and like, let's get our hands dirty and get in here.
Yeah, that's so smart, because coach's favorite line is, if you did know, what would the answer be? Right. And sometimes that I get the theory behind that question, but also when we're talking about marketing, when we're talking about sales, when we're talking about business strategy, when we're talking about technology or automation or whatever, it's like, I didn't come in to coaching with any of this, right? Like, I was a high school teacher, and then I was a paralegal. That's my background. So when I'm like, well, I don't know, what's the best way to market this? And should I do this or should I do this? And it's like, well, why are you choosing to be confused? I literally don't know. Okay, well, if you did know, what would the answer be? If I did know, I would have a background in marketing, right? Like, there are some things that you just cannot mindset yourself into.
Yes, it's so true. I actually like the like, what I frame it more as like, what do you think it would take to create that goal? Because I want to see what my clients are coming to the table with. Like, I don't want to be like, okay, here's the strategy. If they already have things that they've tried that didn't work, things that they've tried that they don't like, and they know they don't like it, they've already maybe like done my course or membership, whatever, and learned some of this stuff. I don't want to then be like, I'm going to teach you again. So I like to assess, like, where are you? What do you think it is? And then I'm looking for gaps in this strategy, or things that I just flat out think probably won't work, or won't work the way that they want it to. And then we talk about those things. But they're like, I don't need to provide you a strategy because you just like magically know, is so goofy. But it worked for me as the client, right? Because I actually did know.
Right.
It does not work for people. who don't come into it with that knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. And your approach actually is super smart, because I think another layer of the criticism of the coaching industry is this like one size fits all model,
Yeah.
right? I did it this
Mhm.
way. So if you follow exactly like I did it, you'll make $1 million too. Or I got coached this way, or I learned to coach this way and it worked for me. It changed my life. So everybody can get coached that way and it's going to work for them. And
Yeah, it's just not true.
yeah, 100%. So, well, I feel like we could go on about all of these
I know,
layers for
we
a
totally
long
could.
time, but what advice do you have for anybody who is listening to this podcast who is a coach and is questioning, like, do I even still want to be a coach? Is the coaching industry like going down in flames? What do I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. Okay. It's not going down in flames. Um, but there's a lot of industries that are being economically impacted right now. Like, we're not in a recession, but there are industries that are hurting. I have family members in the real estate industry. It is not amazing out there right now. And like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a C, right? Like, circumstance. There are some industries that are not in the heyday that they were over the past few years. And coaching is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly people I know, clients I know, who are having a better year this year than years in the past. That is always possible. But across the board, I would say most people are seeing that they're holding steady or they're lower than prior years. So, like, yes, it's not going down in flames, but like, also, this is the reality. And it is one of those moments of like, if you're really committed to this profession being your career, then like, ride it out, figure out how to ride it out, whatever that looks like, as in any business. But like I was saying with my journey with it, be willing to question it. You don't have to be a coach. And I've said this to clients for years. Anytime I had a client who was trying to make coaching work as a business and it just wasn't working, particularly if I kind of had the general vibe of like, I probably would not hire this person. Like, they don't seem like super confident or super outgoing. That is only going to make it so much harder to
Mm-hmm.
sell coaching. People are attracted to buying coaching from you because of you and your personality and your confidence and how you show up in the world. It's just how it works. Marketing coaching. I don't love that about it, but that is part of the reality. So I always have had this perspective. You don't have to be a coach. If it's not working for you, there's so many other businesses that you could have. You don't have to like go get a job. You could have a different type of business and it could be so successful. Like, you could still be able to, have a 6-figure business or whatever, doing a lot of other things based on what skills you bring to the table, things that require a lot less marketing and promotion and being like an influencery type person in the world.
Mm-hmm. Totally. What's the saying? Like, don't continue making the same mistake just because you spent a lot of time and money making it.
Yes.
It's a
Yeah,
hard truth, but
it
sometimes
is.
it's a truth.
It is. Yeah. And it's so interesting to me over the years how many people I gave that advice to, and particularly would direct them to consider being a virtual assistant. Like, if you feel
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I don't have like graphic design skills or whatever, consider being a virtual assistant because you probably have some experience in your past that lends itself to this. Plus, you've been trying to make this business work for a little while and you've picked up a lot of business stuff too along the
Right.
way. Like, now you know how to schedule emails and social media and whatever. So I would always encourage people to do that. And in the past year or year and a half was like, wait, I have been giving this advice to everyone. Why am I not doing it too? So that is what encouraged me to move into the agency and launch the agency. And it's been amazing how much faster that business has grown than my coaching business did.
I believe it. That's awesome.
People just want it. It's so easy
Yeah.
to sell.
Yeah.
Sell something that people already want, and you just have to show up and be like, I offer that, and you have a client.
Yeah. It's
Not
that
that people
simple.
don't want coaching, but like it's less of an obvious thing as like they already know they want social media management or a VA or an OBM or whatever.
Yeah. And I think what you said about your own journey earlier is important too, in terms of thinking about like, what is it that I bring to the table? What is it that I bring to the coaching industry that if I stopped coaching would be a disservice to people, right? Like, what is it about you, the way that you approach things, the way that you interact with people, the way that you coach?
Yes.
What are you bringing to the industry that is contributing something positive to the world?
Yes.
And if you don't have an answer to that, maybe consider being a virtual assistant.
Right. Maybe it's not for you.
Or getting a job, right? I mean, let's
get a job.
destigmatize that with entrepreneurs too. Like there is no shame in getting a job.
Yes, having a business is not for everybody. And if you got into coaching or got into online business because you thought this is going to be a way that I can work like 8 to 10 hours a week and make $100K a year or more. No.
It's like becoming a teacher just so you can have summers off.
Yes.
It's like, I promise you those summers off are not worth it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I do think that there's some people who bought that dream, and those people should get a job because a job is going to be so much more contained to the work hours. It's going to be so much more consistent in how much you're getting paid. There's so many benefits to jobs. And then there's people like me who are just like, it's not for me because I will quit. I will find a reason to quit. So I had to make my own job. But I think it is a better fit for a lot of people. And not everyone can be a business owner and have our world still function also, you know?
Yeah. So I think you just got to be honest with yourself about where your relationship is at with coaching, where your relationship is at with being a business owner, and then make your decision from that space.
And you can also do both. You can have your job and you can coach part-time, and you can then take whatever money you make from the coaching business and then invest it into anything and then have some like real legit passive income.
Right. You're so smart.
It's almost like you've been doing this a while. Yeah, we need to think outside the models that we've seen.
Yeah, for sure. This is so good. Thank you so much, Samantha, for coming on the podcast and talking about this topic. It's such a big topic. I'm asking you to boil down into like 25 minutes, but I think you brought up a lot of really good, important points for people in any industry really to consider. So I really appreciate your perspective and your wisdom here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was such a fun conversation. This is the stuff that I just get on rants about all the time. So I'm happy to have another outlet for this conversation.
Yeah, well, you can come back and rant anytime. If anybody wants to connect with you, if they want to learn more about what you do as a coach, more about what you do in your agency, or they just want to be around you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, so they can check out my website, samanthasiffring.com. Or join my Facebook group, which is Online Business Building Women. I'm pretty active in there. You can DM me, and it's a good place for us to connect.
Awesome. Love it. I will put the link for both of those in the show notes. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Your Relationship With podcast. I would love to know what you thought about today's episode. So click the link in the show notes, follow me on Instagram, and send me a message. I want to hear your thoughts. Whether you're a coach, you are thinking about becoming a coach, you are thinking about hiring a coach, or you have hired a coach. I want to know what you think about what's going on in the coaching industry and what Samantha had to say about it. I would also love to get to know you more in the Powerful Women Rising community. If you want to network and mastermind and share with a group of amazing female entrepreneurs just like you, definitely check out the Powerful Women Rising community. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss next week's episode. I will see you there.